Ever feel like the world is spinning out of control? Like every tiny setback feels like the end of the world? I get it. Life can throw a lot at us, and it's easy to feel anxious, overwhelmed, and stuck. But what if I told you that, instead of running from those tough moments, you could actually lean into them? In today's video, we're diving into ancient Stoic wisdom, the ultimate guide to transforming anxiety into your secret weapon. We'll explore how you can turn life's challenges into opportunities for growth, stop obsessing over things you can't control, and start living right now instead of worrying about what's next. Sound too good to be true? Trust me, it's not. Stick around, because I'm about to show you how embracing adversity and focusing on what really matters can lead you to the peace and clarity you've been looking for. But before diving into the video, please do like, share, comment, and hit the subscribe button for more of these videos. Let's dive in. Number 1, challenge your assumptions, cognitive reframing. Psychological foundation. At the heart of anxiety lies cognitive distortion, the way we distort reality through our thoughts. One of the most common distortions is catastrophizing, which is when we assume the worst possible outcome without any real evidence. In cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, challenging these automatic, unexamined thoughts is a key strategy. Stoicism, in a way, uses a rational approach to mental clarity to neutralize these distorted beliefs and regain control over your emotional state. What this means, Stoicism teaches us that our emotions are not driven by the events themselves, but by how we interpret them. So often, our assumptions, especially when they are driven by fear or anxiety, are exaggerated or irrational. For example, an impending meeting might trigger thoughts like, "I'm going to be exposed as incompetent," or "everyone is going to think I'm terrible." These thoughts amplify the anxiety, because they predict extreme and often unrealistic consequences. How to practice. 1. Identify the triggering assumption. When you feel anxiety creeping in, take a moment to pause and identify the exact assumption driving your fear. For example, if you're anxious about a presentation at work, ask yourself, what is the belief behind this feeling? Is it that I'll make a mistake and be judged? This is your initial assumption. 2. Evaluate the evidence. Ask yourself, what evidence do I actually have that this will happen? Can you recall past experiences where you did well in similar situations? Or, more importantly, do you have any objective data showing that mistakes, if they happen, are not catastrophic? You'll often find that the evidence shows your fears are exaggerated. Anxiety thrives in the realm of ambiguity, when you lack clear evidence. 3. Challenge your worst-case scenario. Use the Stoic practice of negative visualization. Consider the worst possible outcome, and ask yourself, what would actually happen if the worst-case scenario occurred? Let's say you failed your presentation, would you be fired? Would it end your career? Probably not. Most likely, you'd receive feedback, learn from it, and improve for next time. Examining the worst-case scenario disarms it, making it less terrifying and helping you realize that even the worst outcomes are manageable. 4. Reframe the assumption. Replace the negative assumption with something more realistic. Instead of thinking, "I'm going to fail," try thinking, "I might feel nervous, but I've prepared well and will do my best. Even if I make a mistake, I can recover and keep going." This reframing not only calms the emotional reaction but also builds your self-efficacy, the belief that you can handle challenges. Why this works. This process helps you dismantle irrational beliefs that fuel anxiety. By critically examining your assumptions, you realize that most of what we fear is unfounded or exaggerated. Replacing catastrophic thoughts with realistic ones reduces anxiety, because you now have a rational response to the situation, instead of reacting emotionally. Number 2, avoid ruminating on what-ifs, future projection and the fear of uncertainty. Psychological foundation. Rumination and excessive worry are deeply tied to our fear of uncertainty and perceived lack of control. When we repeatedly ask, "What if?" we project into the future, imagining countless possibilities. This leads to anxiety paralysis, a state where we get so fixated on potential outcomes that we fail to take action. Psychologically, This often stems from cognitive avoidance. We try to control or predict the future because we are uncomfortable with uncertainty. What this means, Stoicism teaches us that the future is unknowable, and obsessing over predicting it is a form of mental waste. Instead of speculating endlessly on what might happen, we should focus on what we can control, our actions in the present moment. How to practice. 1. Catch yourself in the what if spiral. The moment you start asking, what if, stop. Notice the pattern. You'll likely feel anxiety building as you imagine a growing list of disastrous outcomes. Recognize that these what-ifs have no solid basis in reality. They are mental habits, and you can break them. 2. Refocus on what you can control. Instead of getting lost in endless what-ifs, shift your focus to the present. Ask yourself, what can I do right now to prepare for or respond to this situation? In Stoic terms, focus on the present moment, and on what is within your control, your actions. This helps reduce anxiety, because you are moving from speculation to action. For example, if you're anxious about a presentation, focus on your next step, reviewing your notes, practicing your speech, or managing your physical energy. 3. Use Stoic mindfulness. In Stoicism, mindfulness is not just about being present, but about recognizing the impermanence of everything. The Stoics remind us that nothing is permanent, not even our problems. Even if you fail or face setbacks, these are temporary experiences that will pass. Embrace the acceptance of life's impermanence. Understanding this helps free you from clinging to the idea of a perfect future, and allows you to fully engage with the present. 4. Adopt the view of the observer. Practice seeing the situation objectively. Instead of getting caught up in your personal fears, imagine yourself as an outsider. If I were a wise mentor looking at this situation, what would I suggest? What advice would I give for handling this with composure and dignity? Why this works: when we stop trying to control or predict every aspect of the future, we free ourselves to act without fear of the unknown. Stoicism teaches us that embracing uncertainty, rather than fearing it, actually reduces anxiety. When we focus on our actions and responses, we feel empowered, not helpless. And that sense of empowerment diminishes fear. Number 3, act according to your highest values, eudaimonia, living with purpose. Psychological foundation. When our actions are not aligned with our core values, it creates inner conflict, a kind of cognitive dissonance, that leads to anxiety. Cognitive dissonance happens when our behavior contradicts our values, and that misalignment causes emotional discomfort. This inner friction produces stress and a lack of fulfillment. What this means: Stoicism argues that the key to peace of mind is living in accordance with virtue, excellence, and purpose. The Stoic concept of eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing, refers to living authentically, in alignment with your deepest values. When we act according to what we truly value, we experience coherence between our inner and outer worlds, reducing anxiety because we no longer feel torn between conflicting desires. How to practice. 1. Clarify your core values. Take time to reflect on what truly matters to you. These values could include honesty, courage, compassion, wisdom, or justice. They should reflect who you are at your core, not what society or others expect of you. Ask yourself, what is truly important to me? What kind of person do I want to be? 2. Align your actions with your values. When faced with a difficult decision or challenge, ask, does this choice align with my values? If you value integrity, for example, avoid compromising your principles for short-term gain. When your actions align with your values, your sense of self becomes more stable and authentic, reducing anxiety born from inner conflict. 3. Practice daily reflection. At the end of each day, reflect on your actions. Did I live according to my values today? Did I act with wisdom and integrity, even when it was difficult? This kind of self-reflection builds self-awareness, which is the antidote to the anxiety that arises from feeling disconnected or inauthentic. 4. Embrace meaning over external rewards. True happiness comes not from external success or praise but from living a virtuous life. Stoics argue that we should focus on inner excellence rather than on external measures like wealth or fame. This shift in perspective frees us from the anxiety of constantly seeking approval or fearing failure. Why this works? When we live according to our true values, we experience greater authenticity and self-respect. This alignment reduces cognitive dissonance and the anxiety that comes with feeling out of sync with ourselves, making us more at peace because we are no longer second-guessing our choices or seeking validation from others. Number 4. Detach from external validation, self-worth from within. Psychological foundation. External validation can be addictive, because it reinforces our sense of self based on what others think. This leaves us vulnerable to fluctuating emotions, feeling good when others praise us, but worthless when we face criticism or rejection. Over time, this dependency on others for self-worth can erode our self-esteem and fuel anxiety, as we rely too much on external sources to determine our value. What this means: Stoicism teaches us that true self-worth comes from within, not from the approval or disapproval of others. By learning to validate yourself based on your character and actions, rather than on how others see you, you regain control over your emotional state and reduce anxiety. How to practice. 1. Identify the need for validation. Start by noticing when you feel the urge to seek validation. Do you feel anxious when your boss doesn't praise your work, or when your friends don't acknowledge your efforts? Recognize these moments as signs of external dependency. 2. Affirm your own worth. Remind yourself that your worth is not dependent on others' opinions. Engage in self-affirmations such as, "I am worthy because I live according to my values, not because of others' approval." This affirmation builds self-reliance and reduces anxiety. 3. Set healthy boundaries. Learn to say no and protect your emotional space. When you feel pressured to seek approval or overextend yourself for others' validation, take a step back. Setting boundaries keeps you grounded in your own values rather than constantly chasing external validation. 4. Cultivate self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness you would offer a friend. When you make a mistake or experience failure, instead of harshly criticizing yourself, practice self-compassion. Recognize that everyone makes mistakes, it's part of being human. Why this works: detaching from the need for external validation allows you to take full ownership of your emotional well-being. When you validate yourself from within, you're no longer vulnerable to the fluctuations of others' opinions, which significantly reduces anxiety. You become more resilient and self-sufficient, cultivating a deep sense of inner peace. Number 5. Use adversity as a teacher. Amor fati, love of fate. Psychological foundation. The concept of amor fati, the love of fate, is a powerful Stoic tool for transforming how we perceive adversity. In psychological terms, this is akin to cognitive reframing, but on a much deeper, existential level. When we approach life's challenges with the mindset that they are not only unavoidable, but necessary for our personal growth, we reduce the fear of suffering and embrace resilience. This mindset mirrors the idea of post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where individuals become stronger and more resilient because of their hardships. What this means: Stoicism teaches us that life isn't about avoiding challenges, but about embracing them as opportunities for growth. By accepting that hardship is an inevitable part of the human experience, we shift our focus from trying to control or eliminate pain to learning how to respond to it in ways that foster strength, wisdom, and virtue. The Stoics believed that life's hardships could serve as a crucible for developing character. Every challenge, every setback, was seen as an opportunity to practice courage, patience, and wisdom. How to practice. 1. Reframe the challenge as a lesson. When adversity strikes, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What can I learn from this experience?" For example, if you lose your job, instead of seeing it as a failure or catastrophe, reframe it as an opportunity to reflect on your career path, explore new interests, or develop new skills. This reframing helps shift your mindset from helplessness to empowerment. You're not just enduring, you're actively transforming the situation into something that enhances your growth. 2. Practice amor fati with small challenges. To begin practicing amor fati, start small. Embrace the little, everyday irritations, traffic jams, long lines, or difficult conversations, as moments to practice patience and acceptance. The more you practice embracing small adversities, the easier it becomes to face bigger challenges with grace. For example, if you get stuck in traffic, instead of getting frustrated, use the time to reflect, listen to a podcast, or simply practice deep breathing. 3. Accept the inevitable with peace. This doesn't mean resigning to hardship, but rather accepting that obstacles, failures, and pain are part of the process of becoming a better version of yourself. By accepting that hardship will come, you begin to develop a sense of mental toughness that reduces fear and anxiety in the face of adversity. Practicing radical acceptance can bring you a sense of peace, even in the most difficult circumstances. 4. Integrate daily practices of gratitude. Gratitude is a central part of the Stoic practice of amor fati. Even in difficult times, find something to be grateful for. For example, if you face a challenging project at work, instead of lamenting the stress, remind yourself of the opportunity to grow professionally and develop your skills. Gratitude for the opportunity to learn shifts your mindset from victimhood to empowerment. Why this works? By shifting our perspective on adversity, we transform what would otherwise be a source of anxiety into a source of personal growth. Stoicism teaches that all experiences, even the painful ones, can lead to greater wisdom and virtue. When we stop fighting against our challenges, we gain the strength to face them with equanimity and grace. This reduces anxiety by removing the fear of failure and pain, and instead, reframing them as opportunities for mastery. Number 6. Focus on what you can control. Dichotomy of control. Psychological foundation. The Stoic principle of the dichotomy of control is one of the most powerful tools for managing anxiety. It aligns with modern psychological practices like acceptance and commitment therapy, ACT, which emphasizes focusing on what is within our control and accepting what is not. Anxiety often arises when we try to control things that are beyond our influence, like the thoughts and actions of others or the outcomes of uncertain events. The Stoic insight is that we are only in control of our own responses to these external circumstances. What this means: the Stoics divided everything into two categories: things that are within our control, our thoughts, actions, and attitudes, and things that are beyond our control, other people's behavior, the past, and the future. By focusing our energy solely on what we can control, our actions, our attitudes, our judgments, we free ourselves from the burden of trying to control the uncontrollable. This principle creates a sense of agency and peace, as we are no longer overwhelmed by things that lie outside of our influence. How to practice? 1. Identify what is within your control. In any situation, pause to differentiate between what you can influence and what you cannot. If you are anxious about a deadline, for example, you cannot control the time available or the pressure you may feel, but you can control your focus, your effort, and your time management. Focusing on these controllable aspects helps direct your energy toward action, rather than worry. 2. Let go of the uncontrollable. Once you identify the things you cannot control, consciously release your attachment to them. For instance, if you're worried about how a colleague will react to your work, remind yourself that you cannot control their response, only how you present your work and how you accept their feedback. Letting go of the need for external approval helps reduce anxiety and builds resilience. 3. Focus on internal habits and mindsets. Practicing the dichotomy of control means focusing on internal factors, such as your thoughts and your mindset. Ask yourself, how can I cultivate calmness, patience, and clarity in this situation? This shift towards self-management, rather than trying to control external events, reduces the sense of helplessness that often accompanies anxiety. 4. Act in accordance with virtue. The Stoics believed that the virtuous life is the most important thing to focus on. Virtues like wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance are entirely within our control. So, when faced with a challenging situation, ask yourself, how can I act with integrity? How can I respond with courage or wisdom? Even if the situation itself is out of your control, you can control how you respond with virtue. Why this works? Focusing on what you can control gives you a sense of empowerment and agency. Anxiety often arises when we feel powerless or overwhelmed by external events. By shifting the focus to our own actions and attitudes, we regain control over how we respond to the world, which directly alleviates anxiety. This practice builds resilience, as we recognize that while we cannot always control outcomes, we can always control our response. Number 7. Embrace the present moment, memento mori. Psychological foundation. The practice of living in the present moment is supported by psychological approaches such as mindfulness and acceptance-based therapies. Anxiety often arises from ruminating on the past or worrying about the future. The Stoic practice of memento mori, remembering that we will die, is a tool to bring us back to the present by grounding us in the awareness of our impermanence. This awareness helps us focus on the preciousness of the present moment, shifting our attention away from past regrets or future fears. What this means, memento mori serves as a reminder of the temporary nature of life. This concept isn't meant to make us morbid, but to encourage us to live fully in the present, aware that life is finite. Anxiety about the future often stems from the fear that we are not doing enough, or that we are not prepared. By reminding ourselves that life is brief, we can let go of unnecessary worries and focus on what truly matters right now. How to practice. 1. Reflect on your mortality. While this may sound grim, regularly reminding yourself that life is short can actually help you embrace each moment more fully. At the start or end of your day, ask yourself, how can I make the most of today, knowing that I will not have this day forever? This isn't meant to create fear, but to inspire gratitude and a sense of urgency to live in alignment with your values. 2. Practice mindful presence. Mindfulness meditation is a technique to stay grounded in the present moment. When anxiety arises, bring your attention back to your senses, notice the sights, sounds, and sensations around you. By focusing on the present, you stop ruminating on past mistakes or future fears, reducing anxiety and creating a sense of calm. 3. Let go of perfectionism. Embrace the idea that life is about progress, not perfection. The fear of making mistakes or failing can prevent us from acting in the present. By accepting that imperfection is part of life, you free yourself from the burden of anxiety about making the wrong choice. 4. Focus on small, meaningful actions. Instead of getting overwhelmed by large, distant goals, focus on small, meaningful actions that align with your values. Whether it's a conversation with a loved one or a small step toward a project, these actions bring you back to the present and help you live with purpose. Why this works. Living in the present helps break the cycle of anxiety that arises from dwelling on the past or obsessing over the future. It encourages a deep sense of engagement with life as it is, rather than how we wish it were. By embracing our impermanence, we develop a greater sense of urgency to focus on what truly matters, reducing the anxiety that comes from disconnection and regret. So, the next time life throws you a curveball, remember, you don't have to avoid adversity, you can embrace it. When you focus on what you can control, let go of the what-ifs, and act from a place of purpose, you'll not only reduce anxiety, you'll grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. If today's video resonated with you, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights on how to live a more peaceful, powerful life. And hey, I'd love to hear your thoughts. How do you handle adversity? Drop a comment below, and let's keep this conversation going. Remember, it's not about controlling everything around you, but mastering the way you respond. And if you take one thing away from today, let it be this: you have the power to transform any challenge into a stepping stone. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.